Hello, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to this Words Fest event in conversation with Cornelia Hoogland and Penn Kemp. Welcome, Cornelia. Welcome, Penn. My name is David Barrick, and I'm the managing director of Antler River Poetry, which was formerly the Poetry London reading series. And I teach at Western University in English and Writing Studies. I'd like to thank our sponsors, including the Canada Council for the Arts, the London Arts Council, the Ontario Arts Council, and the London Public Library, and of course, Words, for making this event possible today. So already in the chat, I'm seeing that people are coming from all over the province and the country. I am coming to you from London, Ontario, in my home, and I want to start with a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that we are in the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenape, the Huron-Wendat, and Neutral Chinantan peoples. The First Nations communities of our local area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. Antler River Poetry values the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional and national First Nations, and of course, all the original peoples of Turtle Island or North America. And we also acknowledge historical and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endured in this country, and the importance of taking practical, concrete action to address these injustices in daily life, wherever you may be living and coming from. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that we will have a question and answer period at the end of this event. So please make sure to submit your questions in the Q&A feature of the webinar. Okay, so I'll be checking in on those at the end of the event. So as Cornelia and Penn are talking, when the question comes to you, make sure to drop that question into the chat. Also, or the question and answer, the Q&A, so then I can keep track of them. Please also note that their books are available for purchase through the links that will be dropped into the chat. So some excellent poetry. Make sure to check it out and pick up their books. Welcome, Penn and Cornelia. Maybe you can just say hi to everyone, and we'll get started with the reading. Oh, you're on mute still.
Oh, it's so lovely to be with you. And I am so grateful to be on Zoom as the sleet is just dropping straight down. So we're warm and comfortable wherever we are.
Hello, everyone. I hope you have a morning coffee if you're on the West Coast, and martini if you're in central Canada. I don't know. It's raining here.
Well, it's so lovely to see both of you, and I'm very excited to hear your poetry and to talk to you about these really great projects. So we're going to start today with Cornelia, and also Ted Goodden will be joining us for some conversation as well, which is very exciting. So Cornelia Hoogland's Cosmic Bowling, published by Guernica in 2020, is a collaboration with the visual artist Ted Goodden. Her books Trailer Park Elegy and Woods Wolf Girl were finalists for national awards, and she received 2 recent shortlist nods from the CBC Literary Prizes, including Sea Level, which is nonfiction, but was originally published as poetry with Baseline Press in 2013. Cornelia was the 2019 Writer-in-Residence for the Owl Purdy A-Frame and the Whistler Festival. With Ted Goodden, she produces the podcast series Not Bowling Alone, Making Art on Hornby Island. In 2021, she published a chapbook with Baseline Press in London, Ontario, which is titled Dressed in Only a Cardigan, She Picks Up Her Track in the Snow. And it is a simply beautiful production by Karen Schindler at Baseline Press. Cornelia lives and writes on unceded Puntledge and Comox territories on Hornby Island in the Salish Sea. Welcome, Cornelia.
Thank you, David. It's a really great honor to be here. I'd like to thank you and Antler River Poetry. Also, I'd like to thank Joshua Lambier and the Words Festival for inviting. And I would like to also acknowledge that I work and live and play on the traditional territory of the Comox Nation. I'd also like to think of Lee Miracle, who died this week. And I actually have a wonderful line that she wrote that I just want to frame this reading with. Songs hooked to the language of wind lessens this burden of being. Thank you, Lee, for that. Phyllis Webb also died this week, as you know. I'm thrilled to be able to speak about cosmic bowling with Ted in a few moments, but I'm going to start this reading with reading from this really beautiful publication. Karen Schindler of Baseline Press has been active in the London community for many, many, many years, continually bringing arts to the fore on a national level. I'm really honored to be among her writers. I was really intimidated to write about my mother. I wrote these poems just through my observations of what she did in her daily life. She died in 2019, but I had already started these poems. And that was where I could start. In this first poem I'm going to read, Mallards Look In Almost Daily, what you need to know is that her son, my brother William, died in 2012. And my mother started conversing with him, the photograph of him at that time. And she kept that running trajectory her entire life. It was very touching. An oversized photo of her son is the first thing Wilhelmina sees when she comes home from shopping. Hello, I'm back. Leans her cane against the dining room table, unpacks her bargains, recites both regular and sale price, tallies up the savings. Since he died nearly 8 years ago, she's worked at being cheerful. The sideways smile on his face makes her feel emptied out as the house on the Lights of Vech, the day she and Peter and daughter Henny emigrated, their packed trunks labeled Quebec City. Like in a documentary, when a voice comments on what the viewer sees, she provides a running commentary meant to deflect despair. Good morning, good night. The weatherman forecasts rain. My knee is acting up. She pats the left, notes the barometers falling. The ducks at the sliding glass doors, should she keep feeding them? The widow across the lane, he's lonely, can she help? Wilhelmina looks to her son's photo for strength. He's in a better place now, dry and warm. Searches the photo for 2 white squares, the catchlight of each iris. The second poem, titled On Crushed Ice, I'm reading it for Kirtley if she's here. So this is an overheard phone conversation between Wilhelmina and her daughter, and it concerns a friend the daughter's age who has died. And these people moved from our neighborhood to the United States, to New Jersey, many, many years ago. So it's trying to bring back the memory of this man. On crushed ice. Aged 62, Wilhelmina says, same as you. She's on the phone with her daughter. A few years ago, he called his dad. You remember Lou? Freddie asked if he could come home. Wilhelmina pauses. He was different even when you were kids. He never married. The daughter looks up the obituary online and reads it back. Frederick worked as a supermarket department clerk, including Food Lion in Tampa, ShopRite in Newton, and most recently as a seafood clerk at A&P in Sussex, New Jersey. He enjoyed trivia and Jeopardy. Jeopardy, Wilhelmina shouts. Did I tell you Alex Trebek is back? Recovered from stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He's hosting the show again. Such a gentleman. Funny to think of Freddie cheering Alex on. The same as me. There's only one comment in the condolences section from a former A&P customer. Thank you, Fred, for your kindness and always your helpfulness in choosing just the right fish. In 2018, Ted and I had the great privilege of taking Wilhelmina back to the Netherlands to visit her remaining sister of 13 children. They were the two who lasted, who saw the family out, so to speak. And my cousin Tom took us to visit the house where my mother grew up. And it was a wonderful thing that he did because it was demolished weeks after my visit. So little bird. Knocking rouses the low-rent tenant from his bed. He cracks open the door of the condemned duplex on the Rhine Dike. This is the home in which Wilhelmina was born, grew up, as did her father, who never left, who died here in Voorschoten. You have 3 minutes, the tenant says, stepping aside. A kitchen counter heaped with empty bottles, gray mounds of dishes, a dripping tap, everything tiny, living, dining, staircase to the second floor, rooms that slept 13 children, boys up and down the stairs, her mother in an apron. Hunger, the war, that last bitter winter of war, stories, Wilhelmina's memories overwhelm this frat house. Girls with bows in their hair serving potatoes and kale to the family of 15. Her father standing at the window, watching snow fall. Sneeuw bedekt de velden, kaal is de lucht. Vogeltje, waarheen is jouw vlucht? Snow blankets the fields, the sky is bare. Little bird, where are you traveling? The spare Dutch, the fields and bone-cold sky remind of Joyce's Snow was general all over Ireland. His character Gabriel at a window lost in thought. Here in Comox, British Columbia, it's snowing. Hard flakes tap the patio glass. Time to close the curtains, says Wilhelmina. Turn on the lamps. How does she remember what her father said 85 years ago? Hand on the drapes, Wilhelmina looks beyond the laden clouds, the gathering dusk. She's puzzled or resigned to hear her father, his rhythms in this room. Her long life curving back like the swirling snow upon her need, very new. So thank you for that. I did eventually find my way into her inner life, and maybe Ted will join me now. So we're going to be talking about cosmic bowling, and it was a collaboration between myself, the poet, and Ted, the visual artist, the sculptor, and the I Ching, that ancient Chinese text. Hi, Ted.
Hi. Now for something completely different, right? I'm remembering Andy Warhol said many decades ago that we'd all be famous for 15 minutes, and lo, it's come to pass, right? Good to see you all. I want to express my pleasure that Poetry London has been renamed Antler River Poetry. If we could rename the whole city, things would take on a completely different look, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So what are we going to do this morning here?
I'm looking at some cue cards here because we're we're those kind of people that need a few cue cards. We're going to talk about the collaborative process, and I think you've shown this cover. I think it's an important thing to show the cover. A real stalwart of the former Poetry London reading series, Frank Beltrano, asked more than a year ago, and I have to say I haven't responded to him. He said, "What is the hexagram that's on the front?" So Frank, you may not even be watching, but I want to put the word out. That's the 18th hexagram, work on what's been spoiled.
Let me read it.
Okay, go ahead and read it.
Martha Stewart's glossy mag, open on the table, answers the riddle of a cluttered life, the secret to perfect skin. I work at being my best. Birds at dawn speak to human need. The silence when they go quiet is what music tends toward. The indifferent wind. You'll see that the poems are written in the same shape as a hexagram. You may not know what a hexagram is, but it's the readings that the I Ching offers. So just think of it as a reading.
And I brought along the original, so you get some sense of the scale of these sculptures. They're not large, they're 5 or 6 inches high. And the glass frame is just a way of kind of presenting them. And the book is laid out with a sculpture facing a poem. And we're both keying into this ancient Chinese text, the I Ching. And I have to be careful that I don't get lost in talking about the I Ching. But we're treating that text. I've been using that book for more than 50 years and finding real value in it, astonishingly. And we both have a great deal of respect for that text. There is an essay at the back of the book where I'm speaking for myself and my own personal experience with that text and speculating on what makes it work as well as it's worked for me. But it's a 3-cornered collaborative project. Cornelia and I are working with each other, bouncing off each other. And we're both of us working with the hexagrams inside the I Ching. And those hexagrams are describing, you could think of it this way, 64 common human situations. And it's wide open to interpretation. I think that's why the I Ching works as well as it works. It allows for your projection of unconscious content into it. So it's very complex and it's also very playful. And more and more, I'm really happy to have done this project. That's what I want to say. I like the book, though it hasn't really had much of a life in the world because it was published just in time for the pandemic.
So work on what's been spoiled. Let's go back to the collaborative moment of this poem. What was happening at the time that I wrote this and you created the sculpture?
Well, I remember that I strongly resisted you including Martha Stewart in your poem. It just really bugged me.
Well, come on, she's in the world. I mean, you know, so is the riddle of a cluttered life. Marie Kondo has got her moment in this too, and perfect skin. Who doesn't want some perfect skin? So, you know, I was trying to bring the world in.
And you did, and you did. And yeah, in the end, I'm happy with it. But
so maybe it's showing up our totally unsustainable colonial life for a moment. Yeah. And while you're trying to get to repair, how do we fix this situation, right?
Well, I was taking it up visually with this form. Work on what's been spoiled is, I've got the light behind him there, give you a view of his backside as well. It's one of these hexagrams that seems to be speaking to the world at the same time that it's speaking to me personally. And it's about, this is talking about human situations. I think we all have these moments in our life when we realize that things are not going to get better unless we do some repair work. And it might even be deep repair work, like what's going on, for instance, around truth and reconciliation. Very hard to do But until you turn yourself to that, things are going to remain in some kind of a stagnant pattern. They're not going to move along. So in this sculpture, I'm trying to embody a kind of a reluctant picking up of a burden with that gesture of the form. Might be a moment to say that one of the ways in which this collaboration works is I'm primarily concerned with what a hexagram looks like to occupy it physically. And Cornelia is taking up what it feels like to be in that particular hexagram. And in that case, Martha Stewart got in, right?
Yeah. Well, here's another sense. We were talking just before we went on air, I guess, about winter solstice. And here is darkening of the light. Let's say there are 10 pictures. In 9 of them, I'm what everybody thinks I am, dutiful. But in the 10th, I'm as I know myself to be. Even when I was a kid, there was a room at my center. It had windows that opened to the stars. Time and space whirled outward, except it was me expanding.
And maybe you could also read the 24th hexagram.
I
Return.
could.
It kind of keys into this moment in the solar cycle.
Sap ruddies the bare dogwood. The hillside turns purple. Winter solstice points its pinhole camera toward the burgundy horizon. One season completes, another begins. A procession of choristers carry the candled dark. I'm on a new journey myself, not so driven. Parts of me I've neglected return, take on a burnished glow. So, you know, there are sources of energy, and the I Ching is really open to making them available to us. But I think it takes a broader look than we're used to. In one of the hexagrams, it speaks about when you climb a mountain to get a better view, but it's also true that you are seen more vividly when you are at a height. So I think that's particularly important for women who can use stronger roles as we age, become older women, and know that we're being seen. Yeah. So what's next? Are we just about finished here? I think we are.
We could open up to Q&A. That would be really terrific.
Well, I don't think that's
It's
what's
not going to happen right now. No.
I think we're going to listen to Penn.
Well, Cornelia and Ted, I was just thinking, I do have a question for you, so maybe I could give that to you, and we'll have additional Q&A at the end. Thank you so much for sharing those poems, and also Ted, it's so amazing to see your sculptures actually in 3 dimensions on the camera. That's really, really wonderful. So the question I had for you is, well, to start, artistic restrictions can shape and expand creative possibilities. And in this case, it's the restrictions of the I Ching's hexagram. And in Cosmic Bowling, there are, of course, the glass panels that contain Ted's ceramic figures in their various poses. And I love seeing that you have the 6 planes, ultimately, that are enclosing the figure. I think that's amazing. And then with Cornelia's poems, there's the 6-line structure that contain each of these reflections. So how did you find that the restrictions changed your artistic process and perhaps led to different sorts of epiphanies for you? Going back to Ted's afterward, describing the projection of previously unrealized thoughts, which I thought was a really great turn of phrase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Carl Jung. The essay at the back engages an essay that Carl Jung wrote in 1950 for the Bollingen edition of the I Ching. And it's great to be in conversation with him as well. I've always liked projects that have a structure that you can attach to. You know, the first exhibition I had in London was 36 views of Blackfriars Bridge. That was in 1985 at what was then the London Regional Art Gallery. And the template there in my mind, which I don't think anyone really got hold of, was Hokusai's 36 views of Mount Fuji, which I adore. It's in, he's a Japanese printmaker. But I thought Blackfriars Bridge would stand in for Mount Fuji, and one could just kind of explore around it, look at it from different angles. Eventually, I even got into going up in a small plane and taking photographs of it from above. So it was just very rich, but that kind of structure with its limits has always been very important to me. It keeps me from, it gives shape, keeps the edges of things within view. I think it was Goethe himself who said that art exists in limitation.
Well, that's a wonderful question that you asked, David. And for me, it changed my voice. It changed the speaker of poetry. I didn't realize this, that it was even happening, but just in the way that I just talked about, when you climb a mountain for a view, guess what? You're also being seen. I say that I developed a more social voice. It's not that I didn't speak from my own experience, I did, but I was being instructed as in the same way that the I Ching instructs. I think I was being instructed as much as I hoped my reader would be, or so, you know, and the actual dynamic of that change was that, so in the morning, I write early in the morning, still in bed because the house is usually so cold. We have archaic heating systems here called a wood stove. And Ted had to get up to light it. Anyway, I stayed in bed, and I would have Ted's sculpture beside me, and I would have the I Ching, and goodness, 6-line poems. Who can't write a 6-line poem? So they were so fun to write. I just got into them and out of them like no one's business. And yeah, I could sometimes pull off 3 in the morning, which for me was just crazy. Of course, the editing process did take some time after that. So does that answer your question?
It does. That's really beautiful and really illuminating. And I want to mention as well that I found those restrictions also shaped my experience as a reader. And I in the sense that I found myself reflecting on the relationship between the poems and the sculptures, but also because of the restrictions where the sculptures are figures contained within those glass walls, and the poems are contained within the 6 lines. I found myself noticing more or thinking more about the way that subtle nuances and variation were framed because of that repetition of form. So I thought about the relationships among the poems and among the sculptures, not just the sculpture and the corresponding poem. So really, I feel that I'm still absorbing all the layers of this book. It's really quite a deep work. And again, it has space for Martha Stewart. It has space for Chinese philosophy. And I also loved just the little allusions like to Christo and his wrappings. I thought that was wonderful. And even things like the choir, the interaction of the choir singing Tiny Bubbles. I love the layering of allusions, and it really is a wonderful and deep work. So again, maybe Josh, you could drop the purchase link for Cosmic Bowling into the chat again. And thank you for that wonderful answer. I also want to thank you for mentioning Lee Miracle and Phyllis Webb as well. And I thought it would be important to mention as well that our local cultural luminary, Gavin Stairs, also passed away recently. And all 3 of these people, their presence will be missed, but their legacies will carry on, the deep impact of the legacy. So it's thank you for mentioning them. Yeah. Now it is, thank you, Cornelia and Ted. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Penn Kemp. Penn Kemp has participated in Canadian cultural life for 50 years, writing, editing, and publishing poetry and plays. Her first book of poetry, Bearing Down, was published by Coach House in 1972. She's published more than 30 books of poetry, prose, and drama, 7 plays, and 10 CDs. The League of Canadian Poets acclaimed Penn as 2015 spoken word artist. She is the League's 40th life member, and from 2010 to 2013, this prolific writer was London, Ontario's inaugural Poet Laureate. At Western University, Penn was writer-in-residence from 2009 to 2010. In 2020, she was presented with the inaugural Joe Rosenblatt Mutzi Award for Innovative Creators. And today, Penn will be reading from her great new collection, a near memoir, new poems published by Bellevaux Books. Welcome, Penn.
Thank you so much. And I heard you, David, say published works of poetry, prose, and trauma. Okay, on to the next. We'll go for comedy next. But I'd also like to include in our list of lamentations and loss, Doug Barber, who did so much in Alberta for Canadian poetry. It's interesting that we're doing this near memoir, which Andreas Cornell Grip published this fall, is also a kind of collaboration with my father, who was a London, Ontario painter. And this is a picture outside my bedroom of me at 14. Somebody told me to see, the first thing you want to see in the morning is something that gives you joy, Marie Kondo, and this gives me joy. So I'll start with ignoring anatomy. I grew up with art all around. My father, a painter, gave me some lessons as I had a quick facility for drawing cartoons, but I was uninterested in form. He wanted to teach me skeletal, sculptural aspects of art. I preferred a swift and easy sweep of line. Though he was an abstract artist, he believed in learning basic craftsmanship. The critic in him was strong. So I switched to writing, where I could dictate visual perception to diaries hidden from his eye, his standards, and dismiss the importance of appearance, the arrangement of surfaces I assumed would always be present, the glow that flickered out. That set me drawing a yellow enamel lamp. I objected, so mundane. Why recreate on paper what was plain to see stuck in front? I'd rather be drawing princesses in damask gowns, flowing, full of pinks, swirls, folds, and nothing inside, no firm form to follow. Without skeleton, they were mere drapery. But what did I want with bone? No thanks. Give me free floating movement, no body beneath to stop the course of what I didn't know, what might magically appear without precedent. I'd go for the energy pattern, the resonance. My father and the page have disappeared, but the yellow lamp lights my bedside dresser as reminder, as denuncié, before I turn it out. I think just because Ted's here, I'm going to continue with works that collaborate with art. And this piece, translation, was, thanks to the London Arts Council, produced as a fabulous little video by Dennis Siren. There's a little glimpse of it right there. You can hardly see it. So, translation. I used to prime my father's canvases by painting them white with gesso, a binder mixed with chalk and gypsum. I prepare each surface for his acrylics for color saturation from pure primaries and their complement down to muted neutral. I still wait with paper's white space till words arise, images in words, watching them come into form, specific entities with their own character and personality, ready to burst off the page into life. London, Ontario, 1954, when dignitaries visit. Several elderly painters from the group of 7 came to my parents' parties. Dad, a practical joker, had me at 10 serve them cocktails and, for nibblies, chocolate-covered grasshoppers. Identity undisclosed until the tray was empty. No one then asked for seconds, but the rush was on to fill those empty glasses in a flurry of coughs I feared would kill them. In the 50s, they'd be in their 70s, ancient and frail as crickets. I wanted to read a poem for Cornelia because this is the one she liked. Study in Ginger. Auburn, chestnut, carrot, scarlet, flame. Hey, red. Mom would never allow me to dress in red, orange, or purple, colors she knew clashed with red hair. A grade 7 teacher told me decades later that she sat me in the window aisle so as to enjoy sunshine glinting off my strawberry blonde mane. If it were juice, a light cranberry tinged with grape. If wine, a sauterne, a bubbling rosé. If essential oil, neroli, the taste of tangerine. If scent, what winds carry from May blossoms, hawthorn and lilac, lily of the valley intermingled, a confusion of delight, ripe and ready to turn from cinnamon to ash gray. A vibration beyond ultraviolet where illusion shapes perception. Rainbow spangled color codes between memory snapshots, aging to sepia, dissolve to white. I think just for comfort, I wanted to read this poem from Fox Haunts. And I was tempted to read it because it so corresponds in ways to Cornelia's Wolf Girl. A Child's Garden Fox. This book, which is, I think, one of my favorites, is, and it's got a painting by Dad of Pan that we used when Gavin and I were doing Pendas Productions. We used this as our emblem. A child's garden fox, sleepy, sleeping in my mother's lap, nestled, when a fox ran in front of the car, ran and was transfixed by the headlights and could not escape the trajectory of light, caught, turning head back, tongue lolling as in the pictures of foxes hunted. The eyes like cats catching the light and transmuting it, phosphorescent, bouncing it back. Look, he shook his head and ran off into the woods. Finally, I did not wake up at that night. For nights afterwards, a fox was in my bed, under the bed, in the closet. Mommy, there's a fox in my bed. Make him go away. He was very large. His coat shot off sparks in the dark. His eyes were lit coals. He was growling. He had sharp white teeth. He was hungry. He smelled musty. He was prowling. A sudden switch of the light evaporated. I could just catch his tail glimmer away up into the light fixture. He would curl behind the light, cunning, until the light was turned off. Then he would continue to search. My father, for comfort, explained that foxes were quite small, really, like little dogs, and they were more scared of me than I was of them. Well, I couldn't imagine the extent of their fear then. The fox, I knew, wasn't scared one bit. He was going to eat me alive. Unless I played dead, I froze into the mattress. The sheets, the folds of the sheets turned marble, freeze. The fox could not smell out the stiff and still. I could sleep warily. By day, my father used his imagination. Foxes are really tiny, he said, so small you can hardly see them. That's because you watch from daylight eyes, I thought. And foxes come out in the dark, so small you can never see them. Look, there's one now. He followed something flying and cupped it in his huge hands. Slowly, he opened them to let me see. Shh. It's a fox, he said, and they scare easy. Be very quiet. I peered into the dark cavern of his hand. The something nothing was gone, not in palms hollow, nor the crevices between fingers. Look, there he is, flying there. I followed his eyes, they're darting till catching on to the game. Hey, another one, he pointed. Exulting. I'll catch it, I squealed and caught it. I got one. The nothing in my hand brushed my skin like a moth's wing, tickling, powder. See? Dad looked in. The fox flowed out and perched along the china cabinet where no one could reach. Never mind, there's another. We were all around the room after foxes. They never stayed in my palm the way they did in Dad's. I tried to see their wings. I didn't know foxes had wings. They were all around the room, hovering at the edge of sight and prancing. Tiny pairs of eyes glowed from the chandelier, from the top bookshelves. They were like fireflies whose lights went on, went out. I decided I would read whatever poem opened, and this is what opened. Christmas at the Equator. In the dry air of Quito, low moans drawn below resonance attract us to the old zoo. Two giant sea turtles rise above the dust of their open air pen. The female squats half buried in leaves, mouth agape, while the male humps, clacking shells over and over her, bellowing as if to call his fellows 500 miles east and 2 miles down to sea level over on their Galapagos Island. Newlyweds giggle by in wedding clothes. My tow-headed children point in wonder at two turtle tongues wagging like bell clackers as if to express, explain some ancient mystery. How are we doing for time? I didn't check.
I think we're good.
All right. Yeah, I know we're good, but what time is it? Oh, I'll have to do this one because I'm loving the trees outside your windows, Cornelia, or window, Cornelia and Ted. Celebrating Sawesto trees. Mother trees surround us, the very few left over from original forest we long paved over, old rotten stumps that settlers burnt to clear their land. Sing a litany of names that belong here. Alder, balm of Gilead, willow galore, glorious maple, butternut, hickory, and sad slips of elm and ash. Celebrate those graceful interlopers, the Carolinians, redbud, tulip tree, magnificent magnolia, here sheltering at comfort's edge in snowbelt country. Trees know their season, their reason for being, how each tree reaches out to become world tree. We have so much to learn from not living on, but with our place. We who live in this forest city, Antler River, must ensure a name never replaces the reality of canopy. Long may our trees flourish, for we can only prosper along with our elder brothers, our mothers. You there. This was done as a sound opera called Luminous Entrance at the Aeolian. I find you in speaking tree, ocean eye, river ear, meadow's hand, loop of swallow, stream of thought. There you are, hummingbird, fast as a letter shin on fire on red flower. The mud bank from which turtle drops, splash of circling carp. Duck with her brood aligned behind her, careful setting out across wide water, strutting down the street to the creek. There you are, in a rose first bloom or faded, faintly scent the air. There you arise, full blown, a whiff of this, aroma of that, taste on honeyed tongue. There you are, green again, after drab dearth, long absence of light. There you are in moments between friends, among many. There you are in the mouth of another, tenor's laugh, operatic trill. Enough now. Let it be enough. Now, let us praise. And I'll finish with one that Brescia commissioned. Choose to challenge. This was for International Women's Day. And again, it was done as a video. Think of your mentors, your mothers or sisters, all those who have gone before to seed the garden for your growth to flourish as flowers in youth and fruit in age, community-minded in spirit and soul, committed to community. I skipped a line and it didn't work, so I have to go back. Look to Saint Ursula, who was the founder of Brescia, or the, I don't know how they would say that. They would say the spiritual founder, I guess. Think of Saint Ursula and her companions, community-minded in spirit and soul. Think of the lineage of Ursuline sisters dedicated to girls' education, protectors of land, and of Canada's one women's university. Committed to community, they inculcated women's learning and leadership. Yeah, that's pretty good, but not the one I wanted to read was part 2. What challenges you, my darlings? What challenge will you accept as you step into your own sweet life? Do you choose your own challenge? Do you allow challenge to choose you? Lean into that challenge. Lean into your calling, whatever calls your name. Choosing your challenge is choosing the calling that lets you know who you are, who you may become, what calls you to be the best you can be. What calls you to act for the sake of all beings. What challenges you most is what demands you be the most you can possibly become. What challenges are you choosing to face, to head off, to dare become, double dare? The world is huge, yet there be dragons. Challenge life dragons lurking in dark corners. Invite them into light for inspection. Stand in your power to challenge all that stands between you and your future self. Your mission, should you choose to accept, to choose your own challenge, to challenge your world, all that you know. Activate that with confidence. Call on courage to challenge old fears. Cultivate the challenge. Do you feel it fill you? Accept the challenge to live in joy, in thanks. Challenge accepted. Long may it feed you, your friends and family and community. Thank you. It's so nice to see everybody here.
Thank you so much, Penn, for that beautiful reading. Just absolutely lovely and sonorous. Now, I'd like to remind our audience that you can drop questions into the Q&A. I see that we've got a couple, but I had one question for Penn first that I'll ask myself. Penn, one of my favorite elements of in your memoir is your poetry's engagement with visual arts. The poem Translation, which you read so beautifully, describes the memory of approaching the blank page as similar to priming one of your father's canvases with gesso. Likewise, readers feel the influence of visual arts in your images, which often take on the vibrant jewel tones of an oil painting, I find.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of the visual in your poems, that dialogue between the art forms, and perhaps also the influence of growing up in an artistic family, as you did?
Well, Shelley said deep truth is imageless, but I'm not quite, well, yes, the deep truth is imageless, but for me, the first perception is always visual. So I think in images. And I think if I didn't have my father's critical eye judging a young person's work, as I said in that poem, I wanted to draw beautiful princesses, and he was quite right in wanting me to explore form. And I've learned that since. And I love, for example, in Cosmic Bowling, the constraints of form. But my primary impulse is imagistic. And I think that's probably genetic, coming from that a long line of Scots and Irish, so the Celtic multidimensional realm that we inhabit. And growing up in an artistic family was wonderful, wonderful, even in London, Ontario in the 50s, because there's so many visiting artists, and the young Turks, as they were, Greg Pernod and Jack Chambers and so on, where Dad was mentor to them. So they'd come to the studio, and I live in the house that I grew up in, and I'm surrounded by my father's paintings, and some by Greg, and one that Jack Chambers did of me at the Art Mart, and I was 16 and waxing poetic, knowing I was going to be a poet. So I looked poetically. Jack Chambers was the most handsome man you've ever seen, and he had just come from Spain, so he spoke with a Spanish accent. He was glamorous. And so I posed for him, and my chin was so large because all they could see was his chin. So that's what he pointed. And Dad corrected the drawing and ruined it completely. So that's what growing up in an artistic family was like. Lots of fun. Grasshopper crickets and all.
That's really wonderful, Penn. And I was glad that you read Ignoring Anatomy as well. I found that image as well really fascinating, because your poem is beautifully structured in tercets, and I found it interesting, the notion of different sort of artistic talents having different sort of vocational paths. It seemed to me, and that poetry was the vocational path that your talent led into, with that visual arts element as well, though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
and of course, for me, it's sound. So the two are married.
Absolutely, and it comes through in your readings every time. Well, I do have a couple more questions for both Penn and Cornelia, and also Ted can feel free to weigh in, but I see that we have some Q&A here, so maybe I'll jump to those. So we have actually two questions from Harold Renish. The first is to Ted as a sculptor. Sorry?
Hi, Harold.
Hi, Harold.
Congratulations on your new book.
Yes, two new books.
So here's the first one from Harold. As a sculptor, Ted, why did you not want Martha Stewart in there?
Well, these are all male figures. That's one level of responding to Harold's question. And like we were talking about limitation and the value of limitation. The other aspect of these figures is they all have a ball, right? Large, small, they're doing various things with balls. And I realize I'm not directly engaging with Harold's question, but then I don't think Harold's question is a serious one anyway. The ball activates the form. It gives, if you like, it gives the figure something to do. And it takes on a metaphorical kind of valence as well, the ball. Sometimes you can think of the ball as sort of the embodiment of the hexagram. A weight that needs to be picked up, something that can be lately sported, celebrated, and so on. In any case, I just don't see how Martha Stewart would have fit in with any of that.
Thanks so much, Ted. Harold also has a question for Penn. Penn, you mentioned size differences between seeing foxes by day and night. What is the size difference in the earth between night and day? Does this affect poetry? How?
That's where the oracular comes in, because there's the looming presence. Again, the Celtic invisible worlds looms so much large and opens up into spacious dimensions of which we know very little consciously in daylight thinking. So nighttime thinking is open to expansion, as that word I love in Cornelia's poem, the expanding, that window that opens into space. Cornelia, you would know it better than I, that line, but it's that sense of opening up into inner space or outer space through the windows into stars and into the imaginal realm. And by day, so I thought my father was very clever in that. He took the fear, and I've used that with my own children and grandchildren. So to take the fear that's imagined as beyond, way projected in Ted's word, way past its actuality, like the fox loomed as large as the room, filled the whole space with terror. And what he did was collapse that fear into a nugget that I could eat or if I grasp in my hand. Eat is interesting, but to hold in my hand is nothing, you know? So it was to take the abstract and condense it into something that didn't overwhelm the child. And I thought that was I've used that technique of just collapsing, say, the overwhelm of technology would be for me, and condensing it into a manageable size. Does that answer your question? I don't think so, Harold, but thank you for asking.
It's interesting, though, Penn, that you are talking about reduction or contraction, and you referenced the window that opened to the stars.
Yeah, I love that poem.
Expanding. So those are contrasting movements that serve.
Well, it's the enantiodromian challenge, isn't it, of opening into inner space, which is beyond measure.
Yeah.
Which is what your poem is doing there. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love the two-way sense. The Piscean.
Fascinating. Sorry, I had a bit of a Zoom skip there. I was just saying a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for those insights, both Penn and Cornelia. We have another question, then maybe I'm going to ask Cornelia and Penn a question. But first from Susan Price. Ted, what is your favorite translation of the I Ching?
Yeah, I was asking that too.
There are many versions of the I Ching out there. I've really only had time for one, and it's the Bollingen edition. It's Wilhelm and Baines, translator and publisher, and it was the Bollingen edition was published through Carl Jung's center in Zurich. With this essay, I find it There are several online publications even of the I Ching these days. So there is a whole spectrum, but I like the scholarship that's gone into this. I like the essay by Jung. I like the whole text, and I haven't wavered from that, though I've looked at other editions. None of them seem to have the same substance or depth as the Bollington edition.
But also like you, I've been exploring that translation for 50 years. So it's become part of how we perceive the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, Penn, we could
Fox,
spend.
remember, and that probably really conditions this book. Actually, this book, Fox Haunts. The little fox dips his tail, which runs through that.
Yes. I remember that.
Yeah.
The fox walking over the ice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is poetry in this book.
Oh, yeah.
You find it especially in the commentary on the change lines. There are just these images to die for, and one of them is this image of a fox moving across a frozen river, and just the description of how tentative and knowing that is at the same time. Yeah.
Well, you must look for this book in your library because there are so many images of fox crossing ice and falling and so on. So
yeah. When you
Great.
could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I enjoyed Penn's reading very much. Most of the time I had the feeling that I was walking along the banks of the Thames through the northern reaches of London while she was reading. And I think the last poem you read, which was an occasional poem for the class at Brescia, would that have been part of your job description as Poet Laureate? Would that be occasional?
It would have been if I'd thought of it, but the theme for the March International Women's Day this year was Choose to Challenge. So Brescia commissioned me. And partly that sort of commissioned poem would be as a result of being Poet Laureate. So the same sort of occasional ceremonial poem that that I became known for a bit. So it's unlike my others in that it's addressing the other, addressing the young.
You feel a civic kind of voice in it. There,
yeah. I learned that through that period being Poet Laureate and also writer in residence places. So, but it's and it's also a social or civic responsibility. It's how I would like to contribute to the discussion rather at this age and in this sleety weather, rather than go in March. I'd rather write that poem or one like it.
Yeah.
That's age speaking, I think, because I used to be much more of an active activist. Now I'm a word activist.
Yeah.
But words, the pen,
mightier than the sword, they say. Yeah.
You can't double the N with that one.
Right.
Excellent. I was wondering if I could return to the memoir elements in both of your recent collections, and maybe I'll just ask about this. So Penn, your poems are frequently written in first person, but you draw in the voices and experiences of other family members in the wider community, and also a range of historical events. So they're quite layered texts. Cornelia, in your baseline press chapbook, the poems are in third person and vividly inhabit the experiences of your mother, Wilhelmina. So my question for both of you is this. So in writing such personal poems, what are the essential elements to making that voice ring true to you? And also, how do you balance the clear depiction of memories with the transformative poetic impulse of imagination and metaphor? And maybe Cornelia, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, those are both excellent questions, and to answer the last one about changing a memory into a poem, which is, I think, what you're saying, is that memory has no regard for the reader. It's just it's hazy. It doesn't come with images. It doesn't come with particularly narration. And the really important thing is to become involved with all the tools that you as a writer have to engage with the subject. So I tell my memoir students, how brave they have to be, that they have to enter in, because memory isn't going to do it for a completed text. So that's the second question. And the first one was, just remind me.
Sorry. So the first one, in writing such personal poems, what are the essential elements to making that voice ring true? Especially, I think, when you are sort of revisiting your mother's experience and your mother's history.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, I started out very tentatively because I didn't have any confidence whatsoever that I could write about my mother. You know how it is with people who are close to you. They are a presence rather than, their own individual selves, or however that works. I don't know. I also have difficulty writing about my children. So the main thing was to be accurate. That was it. Just what exactly does she do? And in that, guess what? There is also the person. There is also the revelation of the self. So accuracy for me is everything. And I've carried on. I'm writing a memoir of my mother, Wilhelmina, with the tentative title, Me, Not Me. It's the most fascinating process. It's the most exciting work, I think. And I'm so grateful to Baseline Press for getting me going on this project, because it was the wonderful inspiration in Dressed in Only a Cardigan that, just let me say, my pitch here, 1350, you can't go wrong. Guess what's coming up? Christmas.
And by the way, since we're talking a lot about visual art as well with pen, this cover is a painting by London artist Rolly Fenwick, which is there on the wall. So,
Yeah.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. Anyway, the answer is accuracy. Pen, go for it.
Well, I was just thinking of the historical connection of memory among the four of us, because I have seen Ted shape images or sculptures from clay through many a poetry reading, not these ones, but the same sort of small, lovely figures. And Cornelia starting Poetry London now, a lovely renaming into Antler River, which David, you are now managing, and it's ongoing through Karen, through you, and through all the participants and poets who have so happily read there and been so well feted there. And oh, by the way, Sharon and Thiessen and I have a new chapbook out, David, if you'd like us to come and read there, or Cornelia and I would love to read again there. I like these plugs. I enjoy plugs.
Memoir, Pen.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have been writing. I got a huge grant in 1990 to write a memoir, and it's ongoing. So the words are there, but how to find the structure is, I've been going at it chronologically, I've been going at it historically, I've been going at it ahistorically, I've been going at it from dream. It's, I guess, a life project, because it's, and I have no more to say about it, except that one day I will collect it all and I will send it out into the world.
Well, we're looking
Rest
forward
is
to
silence.
Yeah.
We haven't received any more Q&A questions, so if anyone would like to ask, please feel free to drop questions into that Q&A. I think we have time. I had 2 more questions for you, if you'd like to field them. And the first one goes in a slightly different direction. So both of you, Penn and Cornelia, you've been published by some really wonderful presses that have gorgeously designed volumes. I think in the past, Coach House Books, Woolsack and Wynn. Cornelia, of course, you held up the beautifully designed chapbook from Baseline Press. And Bellevaux books are very nicely designed by Andreas Grip as well. And of course, with those lovely images by Jim Kemp. So one thing that I'm noticing is that for convenience, I often have to use digital copies in my work. And that's, it's quick and it's efficient, but I find that I'm always drawn to print books when I want to sit down and read a book. So I was wondering,
Especially
for
in the
both of you,
bathtub.
how, yeah, exactly. So I was wondering, how important is the book as tactile experience and aesthetic object to both of you?
And for me, it's essential. I find the tracking of lines into two dimensionals on this flat stream, I lose much of the haptic feel of a book. So I think that just the feel, the sheen of good paper and good illustrations, it's a book carries me into 4 and 5 dimensions, whereas reading online, the digital, it refers back to the fingers, but it's 2-dimensional for me and it remains that way. I can't lift it off very well. Unless I read it aloud. If I read it aloud, then it re-enters into the sonar.
Well, we have many, many books in our home, and it's the magnetic quality of the book that works for me. For instance, I'm just reading right now a wonderful book by Janet Malcolm, 41 False Starts, and it's just picking it up because I can't resist and seeing something that I'm meant. You know how it works with writing, you just find the exact thing you need to know at that particular moment. So electronically, that would never, ever, ever work. Yeah. So it's the magnetism of the books, and yeah, the incredible beauty that Baseline Press brings, the hand sewn, the handcrafted quality of it. I picture Karen Schindler sitting in her home, in her office, hand stitching the books. There's something so careful about that. There's something so loving about that digital can't replace. But not to say that there's not a place for the digital.
Certainly wonderful for storage.
Yeah. You don't trip on it as easily.
Yeah. But it goes back to Ted's essay, picking up on synchronicity, the magic of finding, of opening a book, just as I did for this reading. I couldn't have done that digitally. I opened up I opened up field dressing. Fox stripped of fur is pitiable, skin and bone. My glamorous pal looks like $1 million dripped in make clothes hang on her correctly. Adorned by the fur below, she prefers. Naked, she resembles a drowned rat. Not that that has anything to do with, I was hoping we would be slipping on the ice with that, but it didn't work. But Alan Breezemaster as well produces gorgeous books through Aeolus Press. And that's what my late husband, Gavin, did in Pendas Productions. Our modus operandi was book CD combinations so that you could actually get the sonority of words produced in gorgeous, gorgeous editions. So I miss that possibility. Even CDs are obsolete now, but books never go obsolete. All the forms of digital will be obsolete, but books I don't think will be.
Yes, I don't mind having the stacks around my house that I trip on. it's all good. Yeah. We have one more question in the chat from Alan Bricemaster for Ted. Ted, I'm curious about the process of making the sculptures. Are there sketches first? Do you make them in the order of the poems? Oh, and this is from Holly. Sorry, it's from Holly.
No, I don't do sketches first. I sort of immerse myself in a hexagram, revisit the hexagram, reflect on the hexagram, and then I take a ball of clay roughly the size of a tennis ball, And I let the form emerge according to some general image that I have in mind about the arrangement of the body, the forms that I'm looking for. So it has some emergent quality to it rather than premeditated. And I might say that I'm better known as a stained glass practitioner, but what I've enjoyed about clay for the past 25 years is its contrast to the premeditated quality of designing a stained glass window and preparing the cut lines and the long process of letting up and so on and so on. It's very, in a sense, cerebral. And for me, clay has always been a release from that. It not only brings in the third dimension, which I sometimes feel starved for, and rewards the haptic sense, the tactile enjoyment one has in handling real materials. But my way of working with clay has always been open and intuitive and emergent. Yeah. And did I work through them in a series? No, I didn't go from one hexagram to another hexagram. I just sort of entered into them from all sides at once. And I even had a period early on after I'd done all the clay figures of trying to assign them by the same method that you arrive at hexagram, tossing the coins and letting the coins decide which hexagram that particular figure should correspond to. And that worked amazingly well for a while. And then I started getting duplicates and it didn't go on working. But that's how, if you like, loose the whole process was. Gives you an indication of, I'm not using the figure to illustrate a hexagram. It's something a little bit beyond that.
Until the collaborative process reared its ugly head once, not so ugly head, but head once again. And we had to discuss which sculptures aligned with which poems. It was really fascinating. And some of the poems were changed to fit, and some of the sculptures were changed to fit.
Reassigned after the poem had taken its shape. Then it suggested a reassignment of a particular figure. That was really quite a drawn out and intense process, actually.
It's probably the discussions that happened between us that really is the story rather than the product. It's a kind of story, let's put it that way. It was very interesting. We met a whole different side of ourselves and each other in the process. Collaboration is challenging.
Yeah, perhaps we can talk more about collaboration because we both, Cornelia and I have both done a lot in drama. I edited a anthology for both Playwrights Union and the Feminist Caucus of the League of Canadian Poets on performing women, which both Cornelia and I wrote for, and discussed collaboration. I love how it certainly expands the realm of possibility and opens up perhaps the shadow side or the unknown sides of oneself and brings forth others in balance or in retort or in symbiosis. I love collaborating with other musicians and artists as well, and dancers, because they have such different capabilities and their different senses are brought to the fore. But over the last 2 years, there's been no, I've done collaborations with video people, including a recent one with Gary Barwin, a video poem that he set to music and visuals. So there have been, but then again, that's still not in performance. It's still digital and fun, and also in oh, what is it called? Video reality? No. You know, where you become a little stick figure and run around like that. I've tried that.
Mhm.
Hmm?
Animated.
No.
You're talking about avatars, Penn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. And that again is reductive, eh? It's like,
Mhm.
so it's not reductive in a condensed essential self sense. It's reductive in a reduced sense, and
Mhm.
collaboration seems to. I'm really interested again, and I would think about this whole afternoon that we've been talking basically about expansion and contraction of expanding at once into a larger sense that's more aware, both civically, socially, but cosmically. Where did the word bowling come from? It's only referred to once in the whole, but the ball is there all the time.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, it's augmented reality that I was thinking of.
cosmic bowling. That's what lanes are they in? Somewhere in London, Ontario.
Fleetway
Fleetwood.
40 used to do it
Yeah.
on Oxford Street.
I remember.
Oxford and Adelaide. It starts with P.
They do it too. It's a totally disappointing experience to actually go in and try a lane
Palisade.
advertised as cosmic bowling. I don't think they quite know what it means themselves. It usually involves UV lights and glitter, but the idea of it is resonant. It was Cornelia's idea.
Susan Price, Palisades.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The Palisade and the Paladin go riding.
That is the reference for cosmic bowling, Josh.
Oh, fun.
You're absolutely right. When I first arrived in London, before I learned all that it had to offer and met all the wonderful people that I did, when I was still very alone there in the first year, I found myself with the faculty from the Faculty of Education at the University of Western Ontario. And we were cosmic bowling, and I thought, what am I doing here? It was a harsh moment. So cosmic bowling was a great title for this. It's totally undercuts the great.
Well, I love how the 6 lanes become 6 lines.
Yeah, yeah.
Are there 6 lanes at the Palisade? I don't know, but I do know for 12 years I was swimming underneath the Palisade, cosmic bowling and aquafit in the pool of good life.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So that would
I
be
remember
underground bowling, or in the Netherlands rather than the Netherlands.
I remember cosmic bowling and glow bowling being quite popular for birthday parties when I was a kid, and it seemed very dazzling at the time, but perspectives
I still
change.
don't know what it means, cosmic bowling. I don't know what it is.
Bowling in
just about
bowling in the stars, Penn.
With the artificial lighting, that's the cosmic?
Oh, whatever, doesn't matter.
Or isn't it a Norse god who is bowling up in the sky, and that's what we get thunder? Why we get thunder?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Rip Van Winkle, says Katerina.
I think there's something kind of whimsical about the title. That's what I think, but I like it. Yeah.
It's great. So I have one more question for you. Speaking of expansion and contraction, before we wrap up for today. So in all of your work, there's a meditative and self-reflective quality that goes quite deep in Cosmic Bowling, in Penn's books, and also in your solo books, Cornelia. But also, there's a looking outwards to community and to larger issues. So how do all of you see poetry and art in general, perhaps as a way of engaging with some of the larger issues that we face, such as climate change or social justice, and perhaps encouraging action? Is there a dimension of that, do you see, in poetry and art in general?
Wow, big questions, David. Thank you so much for all the thought that you've put into shaping them. They're like little mini essays. Really, really wonderful.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure hearing your wonderful answers.
Okay. All right. So the smallness of the individual in community. Penn, what do you have to say on this?
Well, I think the I Ching, which I've been taught to pronounce as I Ching, and for 50 years I called it I Ching, but I actually sourced it on the web, and it's now pronounced I Ching, which I don't like nearly as well. But the preponderance of the small, and that one poem that you wrote, which had the reference to that woman.
Martha Stewart?
Martha Stewart. What's that poem? Was that the preponderance of the great?
Work on what's been spoiled.
Work on what's been spoiled. Yeah. So, yeah, I think there has to be a confluence from the self, how the self is reflected in community, how community reflects on the self. There's such a porous membrane between the skin and the other, and the mutual tangibility of how the skin is bruised, how the soul is bruised by the world, and how I don't know that art. I mean, I heard Omar Al-Khayyam, who wrote The Stranger in Paradise book. I've just read it, and he was talking about on CBC about the lack of effect of his novels, which were meant to change people, but the people who would be reading them are already on side. So I don't know, you know, Susan McCaslin and I wrote a whole series of articles based on Auden's lines about poetry changes nothing. But I think what poetry does is deepen our reflections and our perceptions and our resonance with the other. So it increases empathy, and the more that we increase empathy, the more we are one with the cosmic bowling, with the roll of the dice.
Yeah.
So I think we're down to our last 3 minutes.
Okay.
So Cornelia, would you like to give one quick answer?
Sure. Actually, I'm just going to read a couple of lines that I hope captures it. Running through the cow fields, my inner sense extended beyond my body's frame. The bright, cold universe goes on, stars, the heat that bend it. It's a very beautiful. It's the self, but in a cosmic context. That really is the thrust of this book. Yeah.
I love where you stop on the 401 and greet the Jersey cows, the cosmic cows. That should be another book, another collaboration.
What a beautiful way to end this. What a beautiful way to end this conversation on those lines, Cornelia. Penn, Cornelia, and Ted, thank you so much for that rich and engaging conversation. It's been such a pleasure this afternoon to speak with you. And for our audience members, thank you for joining us. And I encourage you to check out Penn and Cornelia's most recent books. Take care, everyone.
Thanks very much, David.
Bye. Thank you, David. And thank you, as always, Josh.
Yes, Josh.